How'd you get it to work? What did you end up doing?
I don't know. I just kept restarting, and eventually the gods chose to smile. Oh, actually, at one point I unplugged my camera.
Okay, there you go. Hey, so quick ground rules for this. I mean, people may jump in and they see office hours with me and say, uh, hey, I want to ask feature questions. I want to ask about Blab. I mean, I'm leaving it up to you. However you want to do this. I'm just kind of warning you. So what are the ground rules here?
I think the ground rules are we should do whatever people want. We should have a good time and learn from you. You've got a lot of experience. You're co-founder of this amazing new platform. You have your insight, wisdom, experience, and we should extract that out of you so we can all learn.
Okay, sounds good. I would say experience is the one thing I'm the lightest on, actually. So I would say I have ideas, I have ambition, I have many things, but experience, I would say, is not one of them. I have experiences, but not necessarily experience.
Well, you have experience building this platform.
That's true. I am one of the world-renowned Blab experts.
So tell us, let's start. So just by way of background, so CXOTalk has been going on up through, this is now episode, I forget, it's about 153, I believe.
Okay.
And CXOTalk is an opportunity to talk at length with senior executives from often large companies, but some small companies as well, investors, authors, industry analysts, and really to have conversation with people who are shaping the future. And so in this office hours segment, and the term office hours was your idea, the notion was to make you available to this audience and learn from your practical advice.
Cool. Yeah, the reason I thought office hours was an interesting idea is because I don't like generic advice because everybody's situation is so contextual, right? Like advice that worked for me in my, when I was doing what I was doing is very hard to explain all the variables, including timing, team, market conditions, all those things. So what worked for one person will not necessarily work for another person. So generic advice to me is not that interesting, but hearing like workshopping an idea together or riffing off of ideas together or asking critical questions and hearing what people's answers are, then saying, hey, here's what I would have, here's what I think, here's what my perspective is. That can be extremely helpful for people. So my goal with any of these things, whenever I try to make myself available and get my head out of the Blab, day-to-day tasks is cool. Well, how can I chat with some people? How can I be inspired by what they're doing? But also, how can I help them, and not in a way where I just say, hey, I have all the answers. Ask me any question. I'll tell you the answer. And that's it. That's the definitive way to do something, because we all know that's not how it works.
Well, let's start. And I think, so tell us briefly, what was the concept behind Blab? Why Blab?
Why Blab? The honest answer with why Blab is that we wanted to do something very different than what was out there, very different than what we were doing at that time, because my company had existed and Blab was actually a pivot. It was a change in direction of what we were building. And when we knew we were going to make that change, we knew, hey, this experiment may succeed or it may fail, but it's definitely going to be different than what exists today. So we wanted to build something where it's not that it's the most novel idea. That's not really the case, right? There's other platforms where some of these features exist. Is we wanted to approach it in a different way. So, for example, we looked at it pretty simply. We said innovation is the measure of change in people's behavior. So if you think you've done something innovative, but it did not change people's behavior, I don't consider it an innovation at all. I believe that innovation is something that makes people start to do things differently, right? In my space, in the social space, an easy example of this is like is Slack, which is a tool right now that teams are using to communicate. And it's definitely not the first team communication tool. It's definitely not the first chat tool. It's not even the first chat tool with many of these features. But teams are using it, and when they use it, they send less email. So like my startup, for example, we send 0 email within Blab. So they've actually changed people's behavior. They've changed what people are doing. They put the features together in such a way that it got a different result. And so with Blab, what we wanted to do was the same thing. There was FaceTime, there was Skype, there was many ways to do a video chat, but it was always private. And we said, what would happen if you made conversations public, right? What if I had access to the most interesting conversations between the most interesting people in the world? So, hey, if I'm interested in tech and startups, I want to listen to something like this, right? I want to hear a conversation between two people who are doing big things in tech. I want to hear a conversation between, one of my favorite Blab shows is called Work in Progress. It's a conversation between two CEOs of companies, Jason Fried, who's, an author and CEO of Basecamp, and Nathan, who's the CEO of Highrise. And they just chat about what's going on in their business. And that's a conversation that I would never otherwise have access to. But I get it because there's a platform now where they feel comfortable having that conversation in public.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one example for me. But for each person, there should be many examples for whatever they're interested in. I'm interested in tech and business,
Right.
but others may be interested in totally different things.
Okay, so Blab is all about, the distinguishing feature of Blab is it has engagement with the audience baked in from the ground up.
Yes. So like right now, for example, I was typing a message into the chat because this is not just a pre-recorded conversation where, me and you, we talked in private, we edit it, we upload it, and then others can view it on their own time. The fun of Blab is being able to let the conversation unfold spontaneously, right? Somebody just called in. I have no idea what he's going to talk about, but I know that, the conversation just changed direction just as we were going. So if you're not interacting with your audience, you're not really blabbing, in my opinion. Most people who blab and just want to get a perfect recording, they're not very interesting when it comes to blab.
So well, first off, let's say hi to Roth Sales Enhancers. Tell us your name. Well, hey.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, you know
okay. What? Your connection's a little spotty.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Nope, no good bandwidth. Sorry.
Get on Wi-Fi. Try again.
Yeah, try again. So Shaan, I think what everybody wants to know is, how do you get engagement? How do you get an audience? How do you build it?
Honestly, it's not a sexy answer. So there is no quick, fast, simple way to get a big audience. But that's to be expected, is it not? So when you go live on Blab, you do share it onto your Twitter, you do share it onto your Facebook, so that people who are already interested in you on other networks, they have the chance to interact with you in a totally different way. So that's the fastest way to get some audience, right? That's how we've gotten 77 people so far into this room. But it's going to get bigger and better the more you do it. The more regularly you do it, the more you add value, the more people will tell their friends about you. And that's how people end up joining. So like, I just saw my buddy Sieva just join just now because he probably saw this on Twitter or Facebook. He can let us know in the chat where he saw it. But we want to grow on the back of these social networks where people have already said, hey, I want to follow you. Hey, I want to be friends with you. I want to know what's going on in your life. And Blab gives them a new level of access.
So in general, if somebody wants to build an audience, what are the steps that they should go through in order to become a social media star, so to speak? Everybody wants followers.
Well, I think you first got to ask why you're doing it, right? So if you don't know your end goal, then you're not going to be very successful. So you got to know why you're doing it, right? I enjoy doing this because I like putting my opinions out there. I do a show, for example, called Tech Bits every Thursday, where I just talk about me and somebody else. We talk about the news in the startup world, because that's what I'm interested in. That's what I like to do. That's what I'm reading about and thinking about on my own anyway. So for me, it's an outlet for my thoughts. It's a way to get it on out there in the public without sitting down and writing a blog for an hour. And B, I want to be more known for it, right? So I want to, within the startup world, put my opinions and my personality, my ideas out there. And when I do so, I enjoy meeting new people. I enjoy people knowing who I am and what I think based off of that. So I have two simple goals. So I would say, if you're trying to do this, you got to know why you're going into it from the start. The guy who called in a second ago, he said he's been on Blab twice and he's gotten 11 new clients. For him, it's about getting new clients, and that's what his goals are with the platform. But after that, there's some pretty simple tips. Get a co-host so that you have someone regularly to talk with. Number two, figure out where your audience already is. So, where are people who like this content? Where do they already live? And get it in front of them. Go tell them about it. Get embedded there. Partner with people. Talk to people and say, hey, will you promote this with your audience? And that's the way to get started. And then you just got to do it consistently. You keep doing that consistently, your audience will grow. If you're entertaining people, if you're educating people, your audience will grow over time.
So you have to have a clear understanding of your audience and what they actually want.
Yeah, and look, this advice is not going to seem groundbreaking, right? Like Charlene said in the chat, this is basic. This is 101. But just like everything else in life, it's not about finding a new strategy or this new idea that nobody else has. It's about executing on it, right? I could tell you, if you said, "Hey, I want to get fit," I would tell you, "Hey, you should eat right and you should exercise regularly." And you don't need a crazy secret solution to how to do that. You just have to actually follow through on what we know, and following through is not always easy.
Is there a difference between developing engagement and building a community?
Totally. I mean, a community. What's a community? A community is a group of people who share a common trait, that share a common mindset. And so, if you want to build a community, you got to really understand who you're recruiting in. And once you recruit them, you have to align yourselves around some kind of value, some kind of principle, right? So, if you're doing CXOTalk, for example, let me ask you this: who is the community for CXOTalk?
Well, our case, it's a relatively small group because it's people that are very interested in digital transformation, innovation, leadership. So it's a
What do those people have in common?
They tend to be decision makers in an organization. It tends to be from larger organizations. They tend to be quite thoughtful about those topics as well.
Okay, so they're decision makers in large organizations. And what do they want? Like, why do they crave this content? Why do they take the time out of their day to listen to this?
Oh, these are great questions. So I think the common thread is they are innovative. They're open to innovation. And as a result, they recognize disruption around them. And they're looking for better skills and to share experiences with people who have faced disruption successfully.
Okay, so I mean, what I heard was putting that into simpler terms. I heard, I'm a decision maker at a large company. I'm somebody who's on their way up, and I want to know what the best are thinking. I want to know all the ideas out there. I crave any edge I can get, any content, any insight, any anecdote that I might not have had access to, because that just makes me better, right? Those learnings, that's how I learn. I learn through other people who are out there playing the same game as I am, who are out there in this field as well. So that's what I think, for you, that's the shared thing of your community is you guys crave learning. You'll never stop learning, and you learn from each other. And so that's the simple value that your whole community can be based around. And for everybody, they have to figure out what that is for them, right? Like the Blab community, for example, is based around a really simple principle, which is speak your mind. Right? People are here because they want to speak their mind. They want to say what's on their mind. And sometimes they're just shooting the shit and they want to say what's going on in their life. And other times it's professional and they want to say what's on their mind there, but they're not afraid to put their ideas out there in the public, right? They know that, hey, something good can come of this if I just put it out there in the public. If I say it to these people who are like-minded, agree or disagree, the ideas are welcome.
Yeah, there's some great comments that are taking place in the chat as well. Mark Meyer says the better question is, who does CXOTalk serve? And I think that's a really important point, is which audience are you actually serving? What do those people want, and what are you doing for them? What's the value or the benefit that you're giving these folks?
Are you asking me?
Well, I'm just making a comment. He made this comment, and I think it's a fundamental point, which is being clear about your audience, but at the same time understanding what is it that you're giving to them. What is the specific value? And I guess it's saying the same thing that you just said in a different way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and look, hey, we've got 25 more minutes in this conversation. And what I want to do is, I want this to be valuable for the people who are out there, right? I want them to be excited that they chose to click on this Blab. And I think one of the ways to do that for us is going to be, let's get to it, right? Let's make it happen. Let's improvise. We're live right now. If somebody actually is trying to go somewhere, somebody is trying to move up, right? Like the CXO community does. If they are trying to learn, let's learn, whether it's a specific question somebody has, or they just want to share what they're doing, and let's riff off of each other, right? Let me ask you some questions, and let that clarify your thinking, because that's how I learn. For example, I learn by going to people who are smarter than me or doing things differently than me. And I say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm doing. Ask me some questions. Ask me the stupid questions. Ask me the things I should, so I can say it more simply, more powerfully, more interestingly. That's how I get better. So if anyone's up for it, the seat is open.
Welcome,
You know
Barb.
what? Hi. I'm going to go out and come back in.
Barb, you
But
got the,
Shaan,
you got
I
the snow
definitely have
effects.
something to say because, I built online community for Prodigy, CompuServe, and AOL before we ever had the visual side. And you have been an answer to my prayer in coming up with this platform. But it's time to put the pedal to the metal and roll out there because the competition is heating up. And just with what you have right at this very moment, you can go forward. I've lived my life in beta. As far as I'm concerned, Microsoft has never left it. And so here we are. And you have given us an amazing opportunity. And just with one of the things I hail you for is building a quality community and taking the approach that you did. It was so superb because you really got the people who care about moving the future forward using this type of medium. So I'm sorry, I was playing with my computer and I forgot my settings. So I'll take off and come back in later.
Hey, your effects look much cooler than mine here. I just thought I'd have a funky wall behind me and that'd be enough.
So Shaan, what about audience size? People always want to have a very large audience, but are there different qualities of the audience? A large audience where people are, say, drive-bys versus a smaller audience that's actually very actively engaged on an ongoing basis.
Of course, right? Like for Blab, we don't measure the total number of registered users, right? We care about how many people are active, how many people go in and actually watch a stream on a given day. That's the only metric we measure. You could ask anyone on my team, they wouldn't even know how many total signups we have because we literally don't care. And so it's the same thing with a Blab, right? What you want is people who are becoming loyalists, right? If you wanted to reach the most amount of people, you'd send out a tweet. Right? Go look at your Twitter impressions for a single tweet. You'll realize that got in front of a bunch of people. Did they care? Did they read it? Did they know you better? Are they, more of an evangelist for you? Are they interested in you? Did they reply? Did they join the conversation? Now, those are separate questions. So for each platform, there's a different way to use it. And for us, this platform is an interactive platform. So you should be thinking about, hey, how much are people interacting with me, right? Are they watching for a while? Are they chatting? Are they asking questions? Are they calling in? Those are signals that, hey, you might be doing something right. There are many people who, we had a community organized party here. There was a couple hundred people in our office. Fantastic party, by the way. But the main thing that I was struck by was these people know each other. They've never met in real life. And when they came to the party, it was like they knew everything about each other because the depth of the interaction that you'll get in just a couple minutes will make you feel like you know that person. You will feel like you want to give them a hug because you've hung out already. You've talked already. You've seen this person in action. It's not a cold introduction. So if you're doing well on Blab, it's probably because you're interacting with your audience, probably because they feel like they know you and form some connection with you.
So forming a connection is the key.
Hey, Shaan.
It's always the key in everything in life. That's not just a Blab lesson.
Absolutely. I'm right on that, Shaan. It's always the key. Blab is turning out to be a trust accelerator. And in various types of relationships, of course, with the casual, let's get to know each other, grow our networks because, oh, how fun you're in Ireland and I'm not. Let's talk, let's be friends. But also in the business relationships. I wanted to throw out there that one thing that's coming up, and I'm not sure if you know about it, Shaan, and I'm not sure if you know about it, Michael, is that Hillary Steele is actually putting on the equivalent of a business conference here on Blab, February 16th through the 17th. It's essentially going to be a 24-hour business only, maybe multiple channels within Blab, but the idea is in segments of 1-hour pieces throughout that 24-hour to showcase the incredible content we've all been seeing in disparate places throughout Blab. individuals with incredible backgrounds and what they can bring to the table in terms of experience and knowledge, expertise. Just like Shaan's saying, where I can sit with you and say, listen, I've got a client who's working on a software project that I'm thinking Blab might actually work well with in terms of sharing of information and within specific industries, and we could talk off of that and then maybe take it off into a private conversation. And the same thing is actually hopefully going to happen throughout the 16th and the 17th. So there is another use for you to consider. Take it one level above and then go another level above, because I don't know what the top is going to be. I just know I'm excited about seeing where we are now and what tomorrow is going to be looking like.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've seen conferences, we've seen all kinds of different things on Blab, because you want to only use technology if it removes a barrier. And hey, when I go to a conference and I got to fly there, book a hotel, buy a conference ticket, and then try to sit in the room and try to absorb as much information as I can, those are barriers. And if I can instead watch from my couch, not fly anywhere, watch on my own time on the replay, for example, maybe call in, ask a question where, I can't run up on the stage and ask that person a question. Those are barriers that you remove. And it's not necessarily better or worse. It's different, and it'll work differently for different people.
And that's what I wanted to piggyback off of, is that the people that she's bringing in are incredible names, have never been on Blab, similar to like Tony Robbins coming in at 6 p.m. Eastern time today. They've not been on Blab, but we're willing to give it a try. We're willing to see what happens. And how intriguing is this kind of responses she's getting. What I like is that in essence, what you said is, I'm going to have access to these people that whether I attended that conference or not, I would not otherwise have had, by virtue of something as simple as typing a question in the comment section. And if it's relevant, getting an answer,
So the interactive nature of it is a key, is a key point.
Yes, it is. And here's Hillary now. I'm so glad you could jump in, Hillary. I was just talking about your upcoming business conference.
Cool. Well, thanks for calling in, Charlene. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. So how did you, Shaan, how did you get Tony Robbins to participate?
We didn't. He found it somehow. So
fantastic. That's the best.
I mean, Blab's supposed to grow organically, right? People, it's a public system, so it's very visible. It's out there. And people tell people, they say, hey, this might be a good way for you to do X. And I think in this case, one of the users is doing an interview with Tony Robbins. So she invited him on, and he cleared it with his people. His people talked to my people, and here we are. He's going to be on today.
Congratulations. And hey, Bethany.
Hi. This is my first time on Blab.
Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm kind of nervous.
Here, I'll give you some props. There you go.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to ask, what are the demographics of Blab? Like male, female, age?
Truth be told, we haven't looked. We haven't. Yeah, for us, we're not selling like a service to a particular type of people. We look at this like blogging. We look at this like podcasting, right? It's just a medium. It's going to be used like blogging. There's teens who blog. There's CEOs who blog. There's businesses who blog. There's really not a specific niche we want to target. That's why we don't measure which niche is it today, because that will give us the false illusion that, hey, just because these early adopters use it, that's who it's for. We want to make it as open as possible, where whoever wants to have a conversation in the public, this is a way for you to do it. And so men, women, children, professionals, non-professionals, doesn't matter.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna start, I think, doing it on just startups in general. I have my own startup and do personal development coaching, but I can see how this would be beneficial to bring people on and talk with them versus Periscope. I feel it's just all these people commenting like, "Oh, you're hot," It's a different demographic, I feel like. So
I never get that on Periscope.
You don't get that?
Yeah, I haven't heard that one either.
Well, one example for startups is
that's like what I get all the time. I'm like, no, I'm smart, people.
Well, one thing you might have seen today is Product Hunt uses it. So they're obviously have a giant startup community on Product Hunt, and we power all their Product Hunt live chat. So they embed it on producthunt.com. And they invite in guests, everyone from Chris Sacca, early investor in Instagram, Uber, Twitter. He was on. Like they bring on the who's who of, makers, investors, different people in the startup world. So that's an example of people using it in the startup world, but also an example of something you can benefit from. So like when Product Hunt uses it, they bring a ton of startup people to the platform. And now that's a demographic that exists on Blab who might be interested in your show as well. And so hopefully these audiences start to cross-pollinate, and people who are interested in startup stuff will discover all the best people in startups.
All right, cool. I'll check it out.
Great,
And
thank
people
you.
can just jump on to the call anytime.
Well, in this case, yeah, Michael has the seat open, so anybody can jump in. If he chooses, he can just lock the seat and say, hey, it's just us two for now.
Got it. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
So, Shaan, can you give us a sense of the growth that you've seen? It seems
Rapid.
very rapid. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's just gaining in popularity so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's spreading very organically. Honestly, like all growth is not created equal. So, for example, you could do a lot of paid marketing and your numbers would go up, but you have to know that that's the source of it. And so, for us, we were always just curious: does one blab create another blab? Right? When you do this, and just like just now, Bethany sees it, and she says, "Oh, this might work for me in my community," and then she's going to go and create one, and that's how we grow. So we measure really specifically. Does one blab create another blab? Do the viewers of one become the creators of the next? And so that's what we are most interested in. And we're just getting started with. We haven't even started optimizing that, but that's the next phase for us.
And that's essentially the definition of sharing and ultimately going viral: is one begets the next.
Exactly. That's the viral loop. One user creates the next user.
Mm-hmm. And what are your tips for running a successful blab?
Like I said, get a co-host. Make sure you have good Wi-Fi. Have something you want to say, and I guess for me, it's read the audience, right? You've got a live concert going on here, and you want to know, you want to get a pulse for where they're bored, where they're excited. Do they have questions? Do they want to call in? Whatever it may be, and use that as your guiding light. So use that to decide where to next. What's going on? My cousin just called in. I can't hear you. Can you?
No.
No audio.
Okay. So a lot of it really does, excuse me, a lot of it does come down to getting a feel for, as you say, what the audience is. And what are some of the telltale signs that tell you that you have the pulse of the audience, or you need to refine it?
Well, all the features should support that, right? So so right now you're getting props, that's a signal that people like that question, right? You want to get that immediate feedback. If I get it, that's, oh, hey, they like that answer, they were laughing, whatever it may be. So the telltale signs they're obvious. They should be in your face. People giving you props, people chatting, people asking questions, people calling in, people saying afterwards, hey, that was great. Can't wait for the next one. People following you. Those are the signals that you're doing well. And the opposite is also true. If you're boring and you see people leaving, walking out the door, that's a good sign that it sucks.
And then how do you, if people are leaving, what do you recommend? How do you adjust? What do you do?
You learn from it, right? You figure out what was I saying when they left, right? Did I not deliver? Was my title not indicative of what actually was happening inside? Figure out who's your market. Maybe that just wasn't the group of people who were interested in that type of thing you were doing. So maybe you say, okay, let me recruit more people who are interested in the type of content I'm providing.
So, Samps.
So his name's Samir. So
I
can't hear you, dude. You got to refresh. Refresh. Maybe kill Chrome. I don't know what's going on. I feel like you had this problem last time.
And so
my own cousin can't get him in. I'm ashamed of myself.
Well, those computers don't always work as you want. What are some of the interesting communities that you've seen on Blab?
So we've seen the startup community, we've seen the marketing community, we've seen the sports community. So ESPN uses us, for example. We've seen a lot of stuff that's like just up and coming, which is like there's religious stuff that goes on, right? So there are people who want to talk about religion or the absence of religion. There's a few that are related to like almost like mommy bloggers, right? So people that are talking about parenting or whatever it may be.
Hello?
You can. Yes. No.
Oh, we hear you a little bit.
Okay. I'll talk right into the mic.
you have like
Yes.
the deepest voice ever
Yes.
right now.
Okay. Well, you were talking a little. I got two. So the first one is you were. I like that. The first one was you were talking about, you know, active users a lot. Like they talk about that with Twitter a lot.
Mhm.
Do you care more about, you know, on the service active, or more about engagement and getting like very in depth with it, loyal to the app?
We look at it like I mean, it's a funnel, right? So there's people at the top of the funnel who have come to Blab but not signed up. And then the next step is they've signed up. And then after that is they've actually done something and entered a Blab. And that's where we start to pay attention. But we want to make the whole funnel just frictionless. So if you've signed up but haven't done anything, I'd like to learn from you. We don't count that as a win. We don't count that as a user who's active, but it's interesting for us to learn from. We care about that whole chain. Why are some people so addictive where they're on it 12 hours a day, and why are some people visiting Blab and but not actually doing anything? We try to learn from each of those cases. But what we measure ourselves on is actually something called watch time. So what we measure internally, the big graph on our screen that we take a tequila shot when that number is going up is watch time. So how many minutes a day do people spend watching a Blab? That's the metric we care about. That's the biggest sign that they're getting some value out of this.
But you must also look, so you're looking at watch time per user, but then you must also be looking obviously at the aggregate number of users as well.
Total,
So it's both of those things.
Total and the daily for each user. So the average per user and the total for a day or a week or a month.
And the total number of users.
Not so much the total number of users. We look at that as like a secondary thing. For us, it's watch time first. And then when we notice watch time goes up, it's often because there's a bunch of new users joining, but not always. Sometimes it's just better content. Sometimes it's different things that are affecting it. So the number that we care about in the end is watch time. Everything else is just a way to get the watch time to go up.
It's interesting with CXOTalk, I often use the metric, similar metric of minutes watched.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it reflects both having a broad audience, but even more importantly, the depth of people. But minutes watched per video. So I'm actually interested in both. How many people are watching, and out of that group, which ones are spending a lot of time watching the videos, and who is just kind of a drive-by one-off. Maybe they're there for a couple of minutes as opposed to watching for 20 minutes or half an hour or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think this is something companies struggle with, right? So like Twitter, for example, they really have struggled with teaching the market of how to value them. So what they say is people are asking Twitter, how are you going to get your monthly active users to go up? And why? Because that's the metric Facebook uses. And Twitter is not the same business as Facebook. And for us, an active user is not the same as an active user on BuzzFeed who skims an article and leaves, right? For example, like our average daily active user watches 65 minutes a day of content. So a user is not a user, right? One does not equal one for different services. So you got to know, I mean, the takeaway for you guys is not just, this is very Blab specific stuff, but you got to define your metric, the key metric, and make it the one metric the whole company knows about at all times. So for us, it's watch time. Everybody in our team knows about watch time. They know when it's going up. They know when it's going down. And that's the thing we focus on. But then you also got to eventually educate the investors in the market that that's the number we care about, and here's why.
Right.
That's how you should judge us.
Yeah, explaining the reasons why. The fact that that your average is 65 minutes, that's amazing. It's very, very high.
It is very high, right? That's why the investors love us.
I mean, it really goes right to the heart of that you're doing something that is really satisfying a need for these folks, that they're investing that much time.
You said it right. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then I had a second question. You were talking about doing conferences from Blab instead of going to a place where you have to deal with all these barriers, about like virtual, where that fits into that whole picture and if can do something along those lines.
So, like not related to Blab, right? Just virtual reality related to like a conference.
Maybe so, but maybe even with Blab in the future.
Sure. So I don't think Blab and VR have a huge overlap for any time in the near future. I don't even know if the mainstream and VR have an overlap in the near future. I'm a huge fan of virtual reality. The first time I put the headset on, I was hooked. I thought this was like just amazing. I didn't expect to love virtual reality like I did until I put the headset on. So I'm a believer, and I think like the first time I tried it was at a conference in Ireland, and I wish that I didn't have to fly to Ireland to experience the talks that were at that conference, right? I'd rather put the headset on and experience it. Now, it's more interesting when it's not just like two people sitting on a stage. I don't really need virtual reality for that. I could just watch a live stream. But for other things where like when I was there, for example, I put it on and it was the experience of being in Ethiopia where all these water projects were going on for charity water. And you would literally look around and you could see you were in Ethiopia. There was somebody behind you sweeping their hut. There was somebody in front of you who was, walking by you. It was amazing. And so that's the kind of thing where virtual reality is literally going to teleport you to a place that you may never go in your life. And it feels so real that it's addictive. You don't want to take the thing off, except for to tell somebody else how cool it was. Like that's the only reason I wanted to take it off.
Pass it to them.
Yeah, exactly.
So somebody asked the question about notifications. Oh, I'm sorry.
See, man.
Oh, you're going. Okay. Thank you. Somebody asked the question about notifications. How do you think about notifications? It was a pretty vague question, but how do you think about notifications, and how does that work in Blab, and what is your reasoning and logic behind how you do notifications?
So I think just because something's live doesn't mean it needs to be a surprise. So for us, we think about that with scheduling, for example. You can schedule and say, hey, we're going to have this conversation. Hey, we're going to have this live announcement in 3 hours. And that's totally fine. That's great. That's how live streaming should work, in my opinion. Notifications are similar, where I don't think we do a good job today. In fact, I think we do a very bad job today. So the question is, how do you do notifications right for live stream platforms? Something we're thinking about a lot, and something we have, something in the pipeline for. Where I can't reveal exactly what it is yet, mostly because we haven't finalized it. But we think notifications are super critical, right? You have to be able to tell your audience, hey, I'm talking about this right now. Come on in, join the conversation, right? For me, a notification is not a notification. It's an invitation to participate. It's an invitation to say, hey, do you want to talk about this too? Would you want to be a part of this? And so we need to think about it that way. And there's definitely notification overload in many cases for people who are following a bunch of people. And so we need to be able to intelligently notify you about the stuff that you're going to like, and not bombard you with notifications that you're not responding to from people maybe who you follow, but you actually don't want to go to all their labs.
And it's interesting that you say notifications are actually an invitation to participate.
Yeah, because in every other product, that's not the case. A notification means something happened. Check that out at your own leisure, right? The reason a Blab notification should be exciting is because you can actually join in. You can actually not only hear it, but chat, but ask questions, have access, call in. Notification is an invitation for us.
Great. I think we're just about out of time. Any final thoughts, Shaan, that you would like to share about what you're doing and the logic behind it, the underlying reasons behind what you're doing, and what makes it successful?
Look, I think the people who are here are already sold. The people who are in this room listening right now, they're the ones who are already sold. So I don't want to sell once it's already sold. I think I'll share a thought with you, which is a thought that I had this morning. It has nothing to do with Blab. This thought was just about lying. So I noticed the other day in a Blab that people were using language that was softening what they really meant. So they would say something like, I'm sure he's a great guy, but, and then they would say something extremely negative. And the reality is that you're actually not sure he's a great guy. He's more than likely not a great person, if that's what you actually mean. And so I was just thinking about this the other day. How can I be more clear, more honest in what I say, and not use language that just softens it for softening its sake. And that's what I'm going to do from now on. I encourage you guys to kind of keep track of the words you're using, and see if that helps. See if anything interesting comes of it. If you find that you either communicate more effectively or less effectively, and there's a reason to soften all these statements. So that's what I will leave you with, Michael, is a random thought I had this morning about how we often try to soften something and actually turn it into a lie. And instead, we should just say it how it is and say what we really mean.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. When you soften something, then perhaps the listener may not be turned away, or to put it the other way, if you present a hard truth to somebody, you may turn off the listener, and so the communication ends. And yet, on the other hand, at the other extreme, as you say, if you present a thought that is overly filtered, then the point of that communication may be lost entirely.
Exactly.
On that, thank you so much, Shaan Puri, who is the co-founder and CEO of Blab, for taking the time and sharing with us today.
Thank you all for being here. Hopefully that was entertaining.
It's a lot of fun.
Let me know what you think. As always, put it in the chat, tweet at me. Let me know what you think. I enjoy, I use all these as just a learning experience. So good conversation, Michael. Good hanging out with you.
Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, Shaan.